All right, everyone. Today we're going to tackle a really fundamental question in politics by exploring the brilliant ideas of the philosopher Hannah Arendt. We're going to unpack the difference between two words we use all the time, often interchangeably: power and violence.
Now this quote here, this captures a very common idea, doesn't it? It's something we hear constantly, that politics is just a fight for who gets to be in charge, and when push comes to shove, the ultimate tool for control is force. It's violence. And you know, on the surface, it seems pretty logical, right? But this is where Hannah Arendt steps in and challenges that whole idea. She argues that not only are power and violence different things, they might actually be opposites. Now that is a radical idea, and it's one that can totally change how we look at everything, from protests to governments. So let's dive into her reasoning. So Arendt starts her whole analysis with this really strange paradox that came about in the 20th century. It was a kind of puzzle that really forced people to think about the limits of violence in a brand new way. Just think about it for a second. For the first time ever in human history, the most powerful instruments of violence became too destructive to actually use. I mean, what's the point of winning a war if winning means total annihilation for everybody? This absurdity, this situation where the ultimate tool of violence made war itself irrational, was Arendt's jumping-off point for questioning the entire relationship between violence and politics. Okay, so to really understand just how revolutionary Arendt's idea is, we first have to get a handle on the tradition she was arguing against. For centuries, you see, political thinkers had defined power in a very, very specific way. You can see the pattern here, right? It is all about domination. Power is seen as the ability of one person or one group to make another group do what they want. It's a relationship built on command on one side and obedience on the other. And this is a really helpful way to think about it. The traditional model of power is vertical. You've got someone at the top giving the orders, and you've got someone at the bottom following them. The whole system is based on this hierarchy of rule. All right, so now we get to the fun part. This is where Arendt completely flips the script. She basically argues that we've been confusing these two concepts for centuries, and she offers a totally new way to look at them. For Arendt, power is not top-down rule at all. It's horizontal. It's what springs into being when people get together and agree to act for a shared purpose. It actually comes from consent and support. So an individual can be strong, sure, but they can't be powerful. In her view, only a group can have power. And I think this analogy is just perfect. You can have the most brilliant violinist in the world, but they can't create a symphony all by themselves. The power of that music only exists because of the coordinated, collective action of all the musicians playing together. That synergy, that is what Arendt means by power. Violence, on the other hand, is completely different. It's not some collective human spirit. Arendt is super clear on this. Violence is instrumental. It's a tool that you use to get something done. And because it's a tool, it always needs implements. Fists, clubs, guns, bombs. The hammer is the perfect contrast to the orchestra. A hammer doesn't have a will of its own. It just sits there. It's an object used to either build something or destroy something. But it needs a user to direct it. It can multiply strength for sure, but it doesn't create any kind of political bond. So when we put these two ideas side by side, the distinction becomes crystal clear. So here you can see the core differences laid out. Power is social. It's about people and their consent. Violence is mechanical. It's about tools and demanding obedience. And maybe Arendt's most crucial point is this: power is an end in itself. It's the very foundation of a political community. Violence, on the other hand, is always just a means to get to some other goal. So Arendt takes this distinction one giant step further. She doesn't just argue that power and violence are different. She argues they are fundamentally opposites and that they have an inverse relationship. And this is the absolute key to her whole argument. Violence doesn't create power. It destroys it. For Arendt, violence is what appears precisely at the moment when a government or a group is losing its real power, which, remember, is the support of the people. Think of it like this: a tyrannical regime's reliance on guns is actually a sign that it no longer has the consent of the people it's governing. The second a government has to force its soldiers to fire on its own citizens, it's basically admitting that its power has vanished. The weapons are totally useless if the people holding them refuse to obey. Arendt lays out this kind of downward spiral. As a regime's legitimacy and support start to fade, it turns to violence as a substitute to hang on. But that very violence just alienates people even more, and it destroys whatever little bits of power were left. In the end, what you have is a regime with a lot of guns but no real authority. It's a state of pure violence that is, politically, completely impotent.
Okay, so this all might seem a little bit academic, but Arendt's framework is an incredibly practical tool for actually understanding the political world all around us. So let's talk about why this really matters.
Here's the big takeaway. When we watch the news, looking through Arendt's eyes forces us to see past the surface. Instead of just asking, who has the weapons, we have to ask, who has legitimacy? So a nonviolent protest movement, by this logic, could be infinitely more powerful than a heavily armed police force. A government that's resorting to brutality isn't showing its strength, it's actually confessing its own powerlessness.
So this is the challenge that Arendt leaves us with. Her work isn't just about defining terms in a book. It's a fundamental challenge for us to reevaluate where true strength really lies. Power, she argues, doesn't grow from the barrel of a gun. It grows from the profoundly human act of people coming together to speak and act as one. And that is a force that violence can suppress for a while, but can never, ever truly create.